Hello, everybody. Today's second review. Now that I'm finally now that I'm finally sitting down and getting some time to record here this morning, because I've been dealing with a wasp problem. I think I finally found where the nest is, unfortunately, behind my electrical panel in my basement. So I've been dealing with bees inside and outside. So hopefully, the problem goes away with a immense amount of raid that we tackled them with this morning. Yeah, because I'm sick of dealing with bees, but the cold weather, now that it's getting a little colder here, will probably get rid of them. So now that I've rambled on, let's get into our review today, which is going to be actually of the first season of Cyberpunk Edgerunners, which came out 3 years ago. I did not realize that this show was actually that old. I guess as far as me getting around to it finally now that it's 3 years old is kind of crazy, but yeah, I remember people talking about it when it was like coming out and super popular, and it seems like there's going to be a second season. Not really sure exactly where the story's going to go because it seemed like they tried to cram in a lot in the first season, which I feel like might have been the only kind of gripe I had with the show, was there was quite a bit to cover, it seemed like, within one season, which is rather unfortunate because I feel like they were trying to introduce maybe one too many characters into the storyline, and sometimes the main character felt like a secondary character to the rest of them. Now it would have been maybe a little bit better if they had like an origin story for all of them, but they kind of told the origin story as the episodes went on, which I found was sometimes confusing, but it kind of, I guess it all wrapped up in the end good enough so that there was at least a beginning, middle, and end to the first season story. So it wasn't all bad, and of course the action sequences were great. This show did not hold back on the violence and gore, that's for sure. And the animation style kind of reminded me of like a mix between like Black Lagoon and oh my god, what was that? What was the other one that's really old? There, oh my god, not Ghost in the Shell. That's what I was trying to think of there. So we'll go over the casting list because I did, however, watch this in Japanese, which I feel like for most animes, whatever language I started in is whatever language I have to finish it in. But yeah, I just felt for this one that it just kind of fit the show perfectly. Anyway, now for Attack on Titan, I think it's the only show that I've ever started in Japanese and then switched to English and enjoyed it more in the English version than the Japanese. It just really depends on the show. Now when I was younger, I used to hate trying to watch the animes in a different language, but now that I'm a little older, I can kind of sit down and really appreciate them in the language they're meant to be appreciated in. I feel like maybe I should go back and watch Attack on Titan in Japanese, maybe, but I do actually have to finish Attack on Titan. It's been, I think I'm still in the fourth season, so yeah, I will go back and maybe review those again at some point in time. So let's go over the cast list. So Ken played David Martinez, Emmy Lowe played Lucy, uh, Takako Honda played Kiwi, uh, Kazuki Inoue played Faraday, Tamio Kurosawa played Rebecca, Hiroki Toshi played Maine, uh, Yasuyuki Kase played Falco, Mikiko Kaiden played Dorio, Tetsu Komuro played Tanaka, Wataru Tagi played Pilar, and Somar Sato played Julia. So Faraday seemed to be the one that was kind of in control of all of these operations. So David, in the very beginning, seemed like he was a straight A student in this academy in the big city, and his mother was really uh, pushing for him to move up to the top, and in this big corporation world, I guess that's pretty much how you make it in this city, right? Is to move up the rankings in all these kinds of corporations. So that's what he was trying to do. And he was kind of like the outsider because he wasn't, like an upper class citizen, I guess. So eventually they kind of I guess you could say like the higher class kids kind of bully him out of the school, and eventually they beat him up because he kind of plays like the tough guy, but he's not really. And eventually he runs into this military grade, what was it called? Like, I guess, I guess cybernetics, like sort of thing. Like it was an attachment that you added on, and they called it like, uh, they called them like chrome heads. So the more like artificial, I guess they became less human, the more advancements they added to their body, right? Because I guess if you really wanted to fight your way up to the top, you kind of had to become less and less of yourself, really, I guess, to work your way up, right? And especially if you were doing like dangerous work like these guys were doing, it was kind of, important to have this kind of technology attached to you, right? So first he runs into Lucy, and she kind of eventually brings him along to this other team. And I can't remember. I guess he got involved because he had stolen the tech for himself, right, and attached it to himself, and tried to prove that he was actually as tough as he said he was, and ends up going back into the academy and beating up the principal's son, I do believe, or the uh, owner of the academy's son. I think it was one of those two. I can't remember exactly, but anyway, um, this guy tries to he basically brushes that off and tries to get David back into the academy, saying that it wasn't a big deal what had happened. I guess because his son attacked him first, he was kind of thinking as like an eye for an eye type situation. But at the same time, they were also trying to get this information out of Tanaka. And it seemed like to me that the information that they were trying to get out had been erased somehow. Um, Now, they were trying to get information because he was working on this cyber skeleton project. So, yeah, they were trying to get information out of him about that. And I liked Kiwi in the beginning. She seemed like a pretty dope character, but then as the show went on, she ended up being very two-faced because she was working with Faraday to basically, Faraday was trying to get Militech and Arasaka, these two different companies, to fight one another. And he was trying to work his way up the Arasaka ladder, so he figured if he worked with Arasaka and he kind of forwarded Tamaka's, yeah, was it? What, oh my god, if he forwarded Tanaka's project, he would be able to basically take out Militech. So he was using David as a, I guess, shield slash scapegoat kind of thing, because he uses Lucy as like a bait basically for David, because he knows that David is in love with Lucy and he will do anything for her if she asks, right? So he's using her to try to get all this Militech destroyed, and he does eventually get David into the cyber skeleton, and David absolutely starts going berserk. They call it cyber psycho or cyber psychosis. So it's basically where you've used so much cybernetics to enhance yourself that you start to slowly go insane, essentially. So it was unfortunate for David that eventually he just kind of lost himself completely, because, of course, Lucy wanted him on the team, but then she kind of pulls out after the whole uh, Maine and Dorio end up getting killed in the crossfire when they're getting too deep into this whole I guess the upper echelon of, or upper tier of, these two companies, right? Like they're getting too deep into what they're doing, and eventually they're just all going to end up killing themselves or getting killed by somebody else because of what they're doing. So yeah, rather unfortunate for all of them, and it was kind of sad that only Lucy saw what was coming. And of course, Kiwi didn't really take Lucy's advice of, don't ever trust anybody, only trust yourself, because eventually everybody's working for the money, right? Nobody's really working for one another. And yeah, unfortunately, Rebecca's brother, Pilar, kind of dies really quickly when they run into this first cyber psycho. And it just goes to show you how powerful somebody can be when they are in that state, because he essentially just like rips Pilar apart with like one punch. And so there's these three different so now that we've gone over the cyber psycho and all that kind of stuff, um, and the cyber skeleton project, there was the trauma unit, which I guess kind of was like a cleanup crew, essentially, where they were kind of like the first line of defense to keep these companies protected. And then we had the NCPD, so the police. Of course, it seemed like the trauma and the NCPD kind of worked together as like the first level of protection. And then we had Max Tac, which was seemed to be like the most dangerous almost. And then, of course, we had the battling companies Militech and Arasaka. And it was interesting because Lucy, when she was a kid, uh, worked for Arasaka as a, I can't remember what they called them in the show, but she was like a high grade hacker. I think they called them scanners. If I'm not, don't quote me on that because I might be wrong, but um, I believe they were called scanners. So they were trying to go into like the old internet that had been wiped out and find information of like the old times, I guess. So it's kind of interesting. Like they were trying to find out like bits and pieces of history, but every time they would go in, like an AI would essentially attack them. And I guess if they were killed in that world that they were trying to hack into, that they would die in real life. So eventually, Lucy and the rest of the kids tried to escape, but she was the only one that ever made it out. And when she made it to the city, she just kind of hid there for the rest of her life. And I guess she didn't really feel like she was being tracked down, but I feel like eventually, her old life was going to catch up with her, and unfortunately, it kind of did. Now, her and David's plan was to make it to this moon together, and unfortunately, David kind of goes off the rails at the end with the cyber skeleton, and unfortunately gets himself killed by this other guy in a cyber skeleton who seemed to kind of fuse with the cyber skeleton himself, called Atom Smasher. And I guess he was, I believe they said he was a general in like the war, and somehow he was like the one and only person who fused well enough with his technology that he ended up, being able to stay sane. I'm not exactly sure how that worked, but I guess David thought he was going to end up being the same, but eventually it just kind of overtook him. And I'm pretty sure I don't know how David's going to come back from what happened to him at the end of the first season, but maybe we'll see him again. But I feel like this is going to be more of like Lucy's story and where we go from there, because I'm pretty sure Rebecca got her taste of medicine at the end of the show too, unfortunately, when Atom Smasher just absolutely annihilates her with one huge massive stomp. So it wasn't looking good for anybody. I think the only two people that really made it out of there was Falco and Lucy. So, and yeah, that was David's plan, was for at least Lucy to stay alive. So he said, just split the money between the two of you and get out of here, sort of thing. So yeah, unfortunately, David kind of, took it a little too far with the whole trying to be the hero thing, but it is what it is. And yeah, I will say, yeah, definitely a suspenseful show at certain points in time. And yeah, it almost seemed like all of the characters that you started to slowly fall in love with or start to enjoy having around kind of just got wiped out episode after episode, which was unfortunate. But yeah, the show definitely didn't hold back on making you feel things for sure for some of the characters, and then it was just like, well, now they're gone, so we have to introduce a new character. And I feel like maybe that was kind of one of the things too that I had a gripe with, was it just felt like they were recycling people all the time. Like Julio seemed like a pretty cool dude, but he gets taken out within like the first 5 minutes of the episode he's in. So I was like, well, that kind of seems pointless. The poor kid was only there for like a few minutes and then he's gone. But I guess that was kind of like the name of the game, right? You knew what you were getting into, so if you weren't careful, you were going to get killed pretty quickly, right? So, yeah, but a lot of cool designs in the show. You know, definitely for the, like the cybernetics that these people were enhancing themselves with. And David just kept getting like bigger and bigger as he went along, until the point where he was obviously that cyber skeleton. He was just able to pretty much do anything in his own free will, but unfortunately the drugs he was taking to keep himself out of cyber psychosis eventually ran out, and he just completely went off the rails. So, yeah, an unfortunate end for David. Maybe, I guess maybe we'll see if he has a return in the second season, but I think he would definitely have to dial it back if he was going to have any chance of, living out a long life or even seeing Lucy again if he did make it out of that alive. And obviously having any chance of taking on Atom Smasher, because that guy seems like he's going to be a problem um, going forward, obviously. So we'll see. We'll see where they take the show and when the second season is actually going to be debuting, because it's been 3 years and I haven't really heard anything else about this show. So yeah, it seems like it's set, but when Netflix decides to release it, who knows? And I feel like a lot of this time has been taken to kind of perfect the show. I feel like Netflix is kind of doing a better job with that. I feel like they proved that with Arcane as well, like just how much they were letting the people who, you know, were animating the show, letting them take the time to actually animate it and create the story and so on and so forth. So I kind of hope that's what they're doing with this one. I guess we'll see. But yeah, going to be interesting to see what happens in season 2. And I think I've rambled on long enough. I've covered everything I can. And yeah, I did believe I said 9 out of 10 was my rating for the show. But in case I didn't, I'm saying it now. And I will see you guys in the next review. Bye bye for now.